Welcome back to 35 Industries. As you can see, we have a new weapon, one that's not quite as devastating as our claymore, but much more personal than our ceiling cannon. A weapon that many have attempted to design over the years, but none have made truly great. At least, that was true until a few months ago. Back in November of 2025, DocM77 uploaded a Hermitcraft video to his channel. That video showcased the design for a reusable Voodoo Machine, a weapon that could infinitely damage a player no matter where they were in the Minecraft world. Built by him, Methodzz, and To Know To Name, it was an elegant design, a precise machine compacted down into a pocket-sized weapon, the perfect tool to punish a thieving, good time having, or snatcher. For simplicity's sake, I'll refer to this as the DM2 design. Doc, Methodzz, and To Know To Name. I won't be going into how their machine works in this video. Doc already did that, and I don't want to steal even more of his thunder. That and Methodzz was going to release a showcase video explaining how everything works. Eventually. Maybe in 1,000 years. So in lieu of that explanation, I will give a general overview of how most Voodoo machines work, plus a little of what the DM2 does differently. First, you need an arrow shot by your intended victim. Any projectile will do, but arrows are the easiest to obtain and are also very stable. You need one because any projectile shot or thrown by a player will have an invisible owner tag attached to it, letting Minecraft know who it came from. Now, most people will just stop here and trick their target into stacking up a bunch of arrows in one spot. Then they will take those stacked arrows, use an entity separator, and drop one arrow at a time onto a mob or player wearing full Thorns 3 armor. This will create a basic Voodoo machine. The issue with a design like this is fairly obvious. It's limited. You will eventually run out of arrows, and when you do, the damage stops. To make it useful, you need either an infinite supply of player arrows, or for your target not to be wearing any armor. Neither option is practical, which is why the DM2 is such a smart design. It picked option number 3, a workaround. Let's quickly revisit the owner tag. This tag allows the game to do things like assign kill credit, award advancements, and most importantly for our purposes, know who redirected a projectile. This is important because if you redirect a wind charge with a player arrow, that wind charge will gain a copy of that arrow's owner tag. Using this knowledge and some advanced technical tomfoolery called entity tick order manipulation, the DM2 design can use a single player arrow to make an infinite amount of player wind charges. Those charges can then be used to damage a mob wearing Thorns armor, in turn damaging the arrow's owner, and making a Voodoo machine. To sum it up, you take someone's arrow, make a quote-unquote copy of it, and then hit a Thorns mob. It's an incredibly simple concept. And I like making simple machines. So how hard could it possibly be for me to make my own version of Doc's weapon, and maybe make it better? As it turns out, not as easy as I thought. You see, when I was walking into this originally, I thought it'd be a slightly more difficult to make Bedrock Voodoo Machine. You see, on Bedrock Edition, Voodoo Machines are so easy to make that they can be created by accident. All it takes is a Trident Killer, and a mob or player wearing Thorns armor. It's so easy. So simple. On Java, it is much more difficult. There is good reason why, up until now, people have relied on the arrow stack method. That's easy to do. Trying to catch a wind charge after it has already been redirected, that is near impossible. That is because when an arrow redirects a wind charge, it also punches it in the direction that the victim player is looking. That direction can be anywhere. I hate it. Now this can be useful for certain applications, such as Squibble's wireless Ender Pearl teleporter. For us though, it's a nightmare. And because I don't understand how tick reordering works, and I didn't want to use nether portals, I had to try to catch a wind charge the hard way. And I tried every trick I could think of. Using the small gaps between honey blocks to slow the charge down, a trapdoor deflector that was broken in 121.11, pistons and cobwebs to push it right after it got redirected, bubble columns to try and cancel the momentum, sand falling on the wind charge, a trapdoor closing to lock it in place, slime and powdered snow blocks to catch after it was redirected. Nothing worked. Almost every prototype failed, either not catching the wind charge or having it explode. I did find working catchers here and there, but they only ever worked when a player was looking at a certain direction, and that was never good enough. Behold the monument of my failures. Over 30 hours of work was spent here, along with entire weeks of theorizing. All for nothing. Eventually, I ran out of ideas. There was nothing left for me to test. No new idea to try and make work. It was the end of the line. So, I gave up. I completely and totally gave up. I'm not afraid to admit that. After all, why should I continue to pour my time into a weapon that was impossible to make? I had other ideas, simpler and easier weapons to test and create. I started work on them, making general layouts and testing alignments. Still, something kept poking at me from the back of my mind. It felt like it was possible, like I was missing a crucial piece of information, a game mechanic that I knew of, but forgot even existed. Initially, I had a false start. I was thinking about substitutes for wind charges, since maybe that would yield some result. Llamas eventually came to my mind. A rather forgettable mob, llamas are intended to be used as pack animals. They can be personalized using carpets and will play follow the leader if you attach a lead to one of them. The part I was interested in, though, was their spit. It's just a low damage attack that knocks back an attacker, but drawing from my well of Minecraft knowledge, I knew that they would be perfect for two reasons. 1. Llamas will attack certain mobs, such as zombies or wolves. These attacks are affected by gravity and pistons. With the correct setup, you can make a llama spit collection system. 2. You can punch it, redirecting it wherever you want. If you can redirect it, so can your arrows. That means you can make a player take thorns damage. That spark of an idea was enough to kick me back into action. I booted up Minecraft, opened up my testing world, made a little bubble stasis chamber, summoned a llama spit entity, and nothing. That wasn't supposed to happen. I set up a llama spit system to test if there was something wrong with the summoned entity, with a llama constantly targeting a wolf. No dice. It dissipated the moment it touched the cobweb. By this point, I was thoroughly confused, so I decided to test it with the /tick freeze command. That is when I learned that punching llama spit is a Bedrock exclusive feature. Thank you, Mojang, so very much. I love it when niche but useful things like this are version exclusive. It really makes me want to buy a $50 bee plushie and set it on top of 5 pounds of tannerite for no reason whatsoever. None at all. So it was back to the drawing board. The heavily erased and marker stained drawing board. You know how I had said earlier that I had given up on the project? All hope had been lost? Well, that feeling of hopelessness had set back in again. I just started scrolling through YouTube, trying to see if I could get any final bit of inspiration from other people's attempts before I gave up for good. And that was where I found the information I had forgotten. A video from Cubic Meter popped up, one where he attempted to make a voodoo machine over 3 years ago. What he ended up doing was using an arrow stack system. That wasn't anything new, but it wasn't what caught my attention. What he initially tried to use was a flaming player arrow to ignite a piece of TNT. The reason he tried that is because whenever a player ignites a piece of TNT, that TNT also gains the owner tag. The reason Cubic didn't use it was because the explosion damage didn't transfer the Thorns effect. A regrettable downside, but it gave me a thought. What happens when a player-owned TNT explodes next to a stasis wind charge? I set up a small testing area and ignited the TNT. I really wasn't expecting much by this point, but it was another avenue to pursue, another test to check off as a failed experiment. Except, it didn't fail. That's right. Whenever a player-owned TNT explodes, it also transfers that owner tag to certain entities within that explosion radius, such as TNT or wind charges. And because wind charges are not pushed by explosions on Java Edition, you don't need to worry about catching them afterwards. This was the missing puzzle piece, the avenue I could use to make a voodoo machine. I actually felt, physically, all that stress and disappointment just melt away. I had a glimmer of hope again, and that hope was enough for me to throw myself back into testing. I started searching for ways to get a player-ignited TNT. The TNT feed mechanism that Cubic showcased wouldn't cut it. It was too expensive and required a player to be there to actually use it. What I needed was a TNT duper that used player arrows. That search was brief and unfortunately fruitless. I quickly learned that arrow-based TNT dupers were impossible, since duping relies on redstone quirks that can't be replicated with flaming arrows. A small setback to be certain, but one that was quickly overshadowed by a new, more tantalizing opportunity. TNT minecart duping. Yes, you did in fact hear me correctly, TNT minecart duping is a thing. I had never heard of this technology before, and after checking out the setup shown off by Inspector Talon, I quickly saw why. The setup was impractical, a cool trick that could generate instant explosions that were owned by a player, but near useless for more practical applications. I needed something else. I needed a stable entity that could be redirected and created an explosion. And then it hit me. Gassed fireballs were the solution. Gassed fireballs are the smallest explosion in Minecraft, generated whenever a ghast fires a fireball at something. Designs for catching mechanisms have existed for years, and with a little testing, I confirmed that fireballs do in fact transfer the owner tag. I set to work making a ghast fireball catcher using a design similar to that used on Bedrock Edition. All I needed was an undead mob behind the ghast and a snow golem on the other side of it to constantly pelt it with snowballs. That would draw its attention. From there, the ghast would shoot fireballs at the golem and, what is... Oh, hang on. Please be wrong, please be wrong, please be wrong, please be wrong. Well, damn it. So, yeah, fireballs were a no-go, but I already had another idea for me. One that would end up being the perfect solution. You know how I said earlier that ghast fireballs is the smallest explosion in Minecraft? Well, I lied. Intentionally, too. I even pulled up this AI summary from Google to convince you. Don't trust AI, folks. They like to lie. The actual smallest explosion in the game is the humble wind charge. That's right, we've come full circle. In the game's code, wind charges do the exact same calculation as any normal explosion, shooting out invisible rays to check and see what is affected by the blast, and applying their intended effects. The only difference between them and explosions is they don't do any damage to blocks, just flick trapdoors and buttons. And because wind charges are explosives, that means their explosions will transfer the owner tag to other stasis wind charges. Looking back on all of this, all the hours I had to spend testing, all the weeks I spent theorizing, I have only one feeling. I feel stupid. I should have figured this out the moment I saw a TNT could transfer its owner tag to a wind charge. I mean, I knew they were both explosives. I forgot about it though. I can't... Oh well. Oh well. It gave me the knowledge to figure out how to make my own voodoo machine. Let's show that off now. Behold, the simple and easy to make BVM. No, I'm not joking, this machine is actually pretty simple to make, aside from the armor equipper. Let's break it down. First, we have the victim aerostasis. This is exactly what it sounds like. Loud and very annoying. And also the stasis for your victim's player arrow. A constant motion keeps the arrow from despawning and allows for it to be quickly repositioned into the correct, position. When activated by an observer pulse, the piston will extend, overriding the stasis clock. Then the arrow will be pushed on top of the slime box setup so it can transfer its owner tag. To deactivate the tag transfer, the machine is first shut off to prevent damage. After some delay, the reset mechanism is activated, pushing the arrow and its trapdoor back into the stasis piston. It's not super lag friendly, but it doesn't require any bubble columns to work, making it interdimensional. It balances out. Next, we have the double breeze catcher. This design functions off of the same logic as the DM2, where an iron golem sits outside of the breeze's attack range, but inside of its detection range. The breezes are trapped inside of minecarts and are sitting on top of an alignment block, allowing them to constantly target the iron golem, but not attack it. This prevents breeze desync and vastly improves the machine's input response time. When the golem is pushed into range of the breezes, they will begin to attack. We can then collect these generated wind charges with a series of catchers and aligners. These aligners are just some pistons with a redstone line and some delays. They aren't very complicated. From there, one of the breeze's wind charges is detonated by the stasis player arrow, transferring the arrow's owner tag to the charge next to it. That charge is then pushed and hits our very lovely Max Thorns armor zombie. The subsequent explosion will cause the armor equipper to try and re-equip any broken pieces of armor that may be on said zombie. This equipper is a marvel of redstone engineering. It uses hopper minecarts aligned in such a way that they could instantly pick up any pieces of armor that can't be equipped onto the zombie. As you can probably tell, I did not design this. I creatively borrowed it from the DM2's design. And finally, we have the witch healing setup for our zombie. This works by having a snow golem constantly pelt a witch with snowballs, dealing 0 damage to the witch but angering it. This will cause the witch to attempt to throw a splash potion of weakness or instant damage at that snow golem, but will always miss due to how everything is aligned on a mud block. I'll refer to this design as the BVM for the rest of this video, short for Bo's Voodoo Machine. Yes, I am naming a redstone contraption after myself. No, I am not vain, I am just unoriginal. Acronym cool, long name boring. Now let's talk a bit about how the BVM improves on the DM2 design. The first improvement is that I simplified the breeze cage. Now the base concept for the breeze cage is very useful. Predictable, on-demand wind charges that quickly shut off after the machine is turned off. It's an amazing idea. I can see why Doc and Methodzz really liked it. It's also why I incorporated it into my design. The execution, on the other hand, yeah, it's over-engineered. Sure, it's more compact and requires one less breeze than my design, however, it is much more difficult to set up and relies on water. Which brings me around to my second improvement. I removed the need for nether portals and for water. Now, why would I need to remove these? It's simple. It dimension locks the build. If you use water, the design cannot be used in the nether. If you use nether portals for chunk loading or for the actual build, it cannot be made in the end. If you use both, a player only needs to search the overworld to find the machine. And with a device like this, you'll want to be able to hide it anywhere. A limitation like dimension locking will get it tracked down and destroyed. Which is incredibly simple to do, by the way. I'll get more into that in a bit, but that's the reason for my third improvement, removing the arrow changeout system. I have a few reasons for that. 1, it relies on portals or an arrow storage setup. Portals are out because of the dimension locking issue, and any multi-arrow storage would be large and cumbersome. We want to keep this build simple. 2, when the DM2 design is found and destroyed, you will lose up to 4 voodoo victims. When the BVM is found, you will only lose 1 victim. You're putting all your eggs in one fragile basket. Don't do that. 3, a single voodoo machine has a very low maximum damage output. An arrow swap out is good for quickly changing targets from one to another, but if you need to target multiple people at the same time, what do you do then? Sure, you could set up some timing circuit that changes who it damages every so often, but that means you're splitting your limited damage across multiple targets, diluting it even more. That's not a good solution, and the only way to truly solve it is to make multiple voodoo machines. And which machine would you rather make multiple times over? A DM2 or BVM? The choice is yours, assuming you have enough arrows. Now for any Mojang employees that might be watching this video,
Then is the
shut
end
up,
update.
Light, I'm recording. Sorry about him, he just wants to fight a tougher Ender Dragon. Anyways, please don't break this. This machine only uses intended game mechanics, just in unintended ways. No bugs or exploits were used here. Also, voodoo machines aren't some impossible to defeat god engine. In fact, they have some rather debilitating weaknesses. Let's start with the first weakness, the cost. Voodoo machines are very expensive builds, both in terms of initial material cost and the constant need for fresh armor. Thorn's armor is the lifeblood of this machine. If you run out, you don't have a machine anymore. It will break. This means you need to keep the armor storage constantly topped up, putting a hard time limit on how long the machine can operate for. The second weakness is one that exists with all voodoo machines. Its damage can be completely negated just by raising a shield. Granted, the shield will take constant durability damage, you can't do anything while your shield is raised, and you can still get hit depending on where you look. But hey, it negates all of the damage. And by using a shield, you will notice the third flaw with all voodoo machines. You can only block damage when you look in a certain direction. How that works is whenever you get damaged by the machine, that knockback and damage is dealt based on where you are in relation to the Thorns mob. To the smart people watching right now, or those who paid attention in the demo clip, you can see how this can be exploited. For everyone else, I'll explain. When knockback is dealt, the game will draw a straight line between the damage source and you, and then apply knockback in that direction. That means you will always be getting hit away from the machine's thorns mob. Using this knowledge, and by traveling to multiple different locations, you can triangulate the general area where the machine is located. Comb that area with your PIDAR chart, and you found the source of your suffering. And that's it. Voodoo machines are just a big game of cat and mouse. There's no workaround to these issues. The machine will only work so long as you keep it hidden, or as long as they can keep the target suppressed. Eventually, one side will achieve victory. And knowing how tenacious Minecraft players can be, I wouldn't bet on the Voodoo machine. It's just a matter of time. The machine will always lose in the end.
The end? The end update? Oh, Mojang people, please, I want new structures with new armor and weapons, and have the chest plate with the elytra, please, that would be so cool. And also, please add 128 skins from Bedrock onto Java and give me a custom cool cape for such an amazing idea so I can show how cool I am. Oh, and please add create mod ears with drivable shields and cannons and grappling hooks, and please add Java parity to Bedrock, and please fix the Bedrock. We don't have spectral arrows and banner maps, and the full screen still causes crashes and isn't fitted properly and has extra pixels, and please add the new badge for us too, and add an inventory update so my inventory isn't constantly filled with random junk items, and I hate all of this.
Do you think we scared off some Mojang employees yet? I sure hope so. We probably tanked our retention rate with that little stunt. Getting back on track here, now that all the spoil sports are gone, there are in fact counters to these weaknesses. Yes, I intentionally lied again. I'm not a man who likes to leave weaknesses in his weapons, especially ones that can be completely negated. Let's talk about triangulation a little bit more. Triangulation is a skill that requires knowledge of math and the law of signs. Most people that I know don't remember that stuff from high school. Traveling to other locations also becomes a nightmare. Using elytra becomes difficult, requiring you to constantly eat golden apples just to out-heal the damage. Hiding from players is also impossible, with the damage constantly giving away your exact position. Now, even with all of the difficulties of triangulation, this is still a major issue. Anyone with the proper know-how will find the machine targeting them. Time will always be your target's greatest ally. The more time they spend being damaged, the more likely they are to track down the machine. Which is why I've spent many weeks of my time finding workarounds. Let's take a quick step back and re-examine my explosive discovery. A detonating player wind charge will pass its owner tag to other close-by wind charges. The question we haven't asked yet is if those close-by wind charges can be used to repeat that cycle, with the first wind charge tagging the second, and the second tagging the third. That would create an infinite feedback loop, only requiring a player arrow or wind charge to start that cycle, instead of my current design that constantly makes new wind charges. It's an ingenious idea, and by using it, you could scale the machine and make as many loops as you wanted. You're no longer limited by the amount of player arrows that you have. As you can probably guess, I've already made a machine that takes advantage of these improvements. It's not the BVM design that I showed off earlier. That was a prototype. An incredibly janky and frankly pathetic excuse for a weapon that had no business masquerading as an improved DM2 design. This is an actual competitor to the DM2, the REAL BVM. As you can see, based on solely the footprint of the build alone, it's a massive improvement, both in terms of simplicity and cost over the BVM prototype and the DM2. There are 3 different sections to this build. Let's quickly break them down. First, we have a stripped down version of the breeze catcher. No clock, no second breeze, and no water. This little guy supplies all of the wind charges that we'll need. I did move the iron golem off to the side here by a little bit, just to make sure the charges were caught 100% of the time. Angles are very important for this catcher. Next, we have the catching and detonation system. This works by having a victim's wind charge in the system already, so we can start our feedback loop. This is as simple as cycling the system once and then detonating your victim's wind charge right next to the caught breeze one. This is very easy to do if you have a tag transfer on site for where your Voodoo machine is. I'll show you how to make some simple tag transfers later on, both for arrows to wind charge and from wind charge to wind charge. I do want to briefly touch on how much I love this simplified catching system. It cuts down on all that redstone wire spaghetti jank and slims it down to a single line with 2 repeaters. It's so pretty. Finally, we have a familiar face. The DM2's old armor equipper, now with more storage. The extra storage is quite simple to set up. All you need is 4-item hopper lock to prevent items from flowing into the 4-item hopper. This allows the system to cycle while also adding in replacement pieces of armor when something is broken. For even more clarity, here's what the individual pieces look like. You just need to add a large amethyst bud to align the zombie correctly, and a button to detect when the wind charge explodes. Just add in the last minute witch healing setup, since I kind of forgot about that, and bam! You're done with your first Voodoo machine. Now we can get to the fun part. It's time to scale it. When compared to the prototype BVM, there's no contest. It's nearly 4 times the damage you were getting previously. It's so evil. I love it. I can't wait to see what you all do with this. What I'm doing here is taking 4 of the BVMs and setting them on a clock, offset by 10 ticks from each other. This 10-tick timing accounts for the damage and vulnerability frame and allows the machine to hit your victim at every possible opportunity, accounting for the occasional miss due to how Thorns works, unfortunately. This combats all of the Voodoo Machine's weaknesses, aside from the cost. The new damage output drastically reduces your opponent's time advantage, with even maxed out Netherite struggling to survive against the onslaught. If you spread the machines out across the different dimensions and quadrants, you will also combat the triangulation and shield issue. This is difficult to do, and the timings are very annoying, but it means that shield users constantly need to look around to prevent the damage, a impractical task, to say the least. As for triangulation, good luck, you'll need it. Trying to find 4 different machines scattered across the 4 different quadrants, and possibly 3 dimensions, is a very rough challenge, to say the least. That, and if you equip an elytra, you are effectively dead. Your health is gone. Trying to escape to another dimension like the Nether at the end won't work either. The damage is interdimensional. It'll follow you. Now, a downside of this design is that the cost of running this machine will be drastically more, but keeping up with the storage is kinda easy if you have any kind of villager infrastructure, or if you kidnap their pet cat and use it as a log-in, log-out detector to activate the machine. 2No2Name has one on his channel. But all of this is useless if you don't use the correct tactics. Proper tactics are essential to get the most out of any Voodoo machine, but especially my designs. Let's start off with the most basic tactic out there. Have a goal and make a plan. This might seem like a no-dur detective level idea. That's because it is. It's also the step that most people skip over because it is so simple. Before you place your first block, stop and think. Who do you want to target? Why are you targeting them? How extreme will your targeting be, and what are the possible consequences of your actions? These are critical questions you should be asking yourself. They determine what you need to do, the materials you'll need, how to best proceed, and how to avoid that ever so potent collateral damage. Once you have a plan and victims in mind, you can then commence with the player targeting. You first need to collect a player's owner tag. This can be difficult if you have the acting skills of a turnip. The easy ways, like asking your target to shoot an arrow into a random hole, will only work on the ignorant or the stupid. For everyone else, you'll need to disguise your intentions. That requires creativity. I recommend making a minigame, stuff like a target range or wind charge wall climb. The owner tag can be transferred through solid blocks. Use that to your advantage. Next, you'll want to scatter and hide your machines. This should be fairly obvious, especially with me constantly harping on it, but actually doing that is the tricky part. Transporting an arrow is a slow and tedious process. For the DM2, Doc used a flying machine. That required him to be constantly loading the machine and keeping an eye on the arrow. Unfortunately for us, that is the fastest method of arrow transportation, aside from some kind of hyper-precise arrow cannon that runs the risk of you losing your arrow. Since I'm not interested in making this video take even longer to make, it'll be flying machines for you. I recommend doing this only once per target arrow, just so you can properly hide it in a hard-to-find location. Following that line of logic, now is a good time to introduce the two tag transfers that I promised to show off earlier. This is the Arrow to Wind Charge version, designed to, well, create player wind charges. It's an incredibly manual design that requires a player to operate it, but that means it can be made small, simple, and most importantly, cheap. The only downside to it is that it can't be made in the Nether due to the bubble column. Here's how it works. Alrighty, I'm quickly ad-libbing this because I am tired of doing clip editing, data, get, entity. As you can see, it has no owner tag. Then we go over to this machine, right here, generate ourselves a fresh new wind charge, put it into position, drop our arrow onto it, it explodes, victim can look in any direction, it's not going to get out, don't worry about that. And then, we press this button again to retract everything, press this, goes back in the battery, boom, problem solved. The reason I use these note blocks is because the wind charge exploding will sometimes press them if they are buttons. This button is, thankfully, out of range. Yay. Oh, and as you can see, now has... Well, dang it. Well, yeah, now it has a player owner tag. This other machine is the wind charge to wind charge design. It's completely automatic, generating a player explosion with a single button press. It's very easy to set up once you have some victim wind charges, and is an interdimensional build. Build a lot of them and hide them all over the place. Your only limit is your redstone stockpile. Now we get to transporting our freshly tagged wind charges. There are a few ways of going about this, but all of them start with scouting out a path and clearing it of obstacles. This can take the form of a 1x1 tunnel, or by just launching it across the world at world height limit. Whatever floats your boat and hides your source arrows works. And because I am such a generous man, I've designed some slime pusher and catcher designs for such a job. Personally, I recommend the tunnel method for the overworld while saving the height limit push for the nether and the end. Now there are trade-offs. The tunnel method is easy to disguise as a swim mine, but takes very much longer to mine out. The height limit push is much quicker, but also runs the risk of discovery, especially in the overworld. Both methods are faster than any flying machine, difficult to spot and intercept, and if for some reason it does mess up, you can always try again. You will still need to chunk load the charge to make sure it gets where you want it to go, but that's a simple walk or elytra flight compared to hours upon hours of flying machine noises. These are good and cheap solutions. Just make sure to cover your tracks and take down your slime pushers afterwards. From here, you'll probably want to set up a remote control. This is less of a tactic and more of a quality of life improvement that I am highly suggesting you make. By using one of DNCraft Hero's wireless lodestone systems, or any other wireless redstone system, we can make the Voodoo machine remote controllable. Turn it on whenever you want, or turn it off. If you're smart enough, you can even make different settings for the machine. Now you're almost ready to execute whatever dastardly plan you've schemed up. I just have a few warnings first. Warning 1 is that I'm not liable for any friends that you piss off. That feeds back into planning for consequences. If you do something wrong, that is on you. Second warning, PyDAR exists. It is the bane of any Voodoo machine, but especially my design. There's just so many different mobs that you need, and it makes it nearly impossible to completely negate the machine's signature. That's why I designed this. This is a miniature Voodoo machine, or BMVM, short for Bo's Miniature Voodoo Machine. Consider it a treat for staying with me so far. It works off the same principle as the BVM, except it uses dispensed wind charges and harming potions instead of more renewable options. This, as you can probably imagine, is very expensive to run, even with the potion delay clock that I added. But it's also much more compact and nearly invisible to PyDAR. A random zombie, skeleton, or pigman with a wind charge is pretty easy to miss. Plus, this machine is incredibly useful for ambushes. Want to poison someone and weaken them for an easy quick drop? BMVM is great for that since it's so easy to set up. Even with more normal combat like a pre-planned duel, activating a Voodoo machine is basically a free win button. The knockback will mess with your opponent's movement and aim. Now for my third and final warning, these designs are not unload proof. If the machine gets unloaded, it will probably break. Make sure everything is within the same chunk, run some Ender Pearl or Portal chunk loaders, and make sure you have spare player wind charges and breeze backups just in case the loot breaks. It's better to be safe than sorry. Now before I end this showcase and bid you all a fond adieu, I want to talk about schematics. Simply put, There are no schematics for this. Zayaf is lazy and incompetent. I know I fell through on that last time, but that won't happen again. I want you to all try to make these machines yourself, learn a bit more about redstone, and try to puzzle out the problem areas. The points that you'll probably have issues with are the breeze catcher and the modified armor equipper. Don't worry, they are both survival friendly and don't rely on any mods or major glitches to work. Now, if you're a big YouTuber needing some assistance with this weapon, my rules are a bit more flexible, let's call it. Not enough to provide a schematic, obviously, that would defeat the entire purpose of learning any of this, but enough that I'd be willing to help you through the process. And maybe share another, more powerful weapon that I'm keeping secret for now since it's not quite finished. Go ahead and shoot me a friend request and DM on Discord. My tag
is shameless.
That's called networking, Dark. It's the best way to grow this channel right now. More networking means more people know us, and that means we'll have more opportunities for video making. That and ad revenue. That would be pretty nice to have.
Makes sense. Annoying though.
Anyways, my tag is Bow Assassin. If you want to make sure you're DMing the right person, here's what it should look like. I can also hop on a call to prove it's me. Just give me a bit to respond since I am currently employed. One final word, if you do decide to use one of my machines and decide to make a video of it and post it to YouTube, please make sure to credit me. Adding me in the video description will notify me that you upload a video. Please do that. I am starved for content with cool weapons and traps, but just linking this video works as well. Now beware of impersonators, think before you shoot an arrow, hide your coordinates, and as always, this has been Bow Assassin 35, signing off. Have a good rest of your day, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Here's a post-video edit since I don't want to do another reshoot for this video. Consider it a little treat for watching this far, or maybe a last-minute bug fix if you complained about this down in the comments and I gave you this timestamp. Hi. For the super observant of you, you might have noticed at this timestamp here, a snow golem is missing. If we look at this timestamp, we'll see the issue. The wind charges are messing with my damage potions. Now this is a fairly minor issue since most of the potions get through and heal a zombie properly. However, this can snowball into a major issue over longer periods of time and can lead to a dead snow golem or a dead zombie. So after I woke up at 3 AM on the weekend, I decided to spend the next 12 hours overhauling that design. At the suggestion of 07KM, I made the design heal the zombie from beneath the armor equipper. That way the wind charges can't mess with any of the potions. At the suggestion of Silent Whisperer, I added 2 blocks to the build. I then removed those 2 blocks because they either weren't needed or messed with the redstone above them. Also, here's the healing setup for the nether. I kind of forgot to show it off earlier. It's the same base skeleton, but with different alignments for the targeted mob. I figured it needed a redesign since I also remade the other one. It uses the raid captain mechanic to get the witch to aggro on the wither skeleton. The reason it's not the default that I have shown you is because transporting a wither skeleton and a vindicator and a witch is a pain, and snow golems are summonable, and you only need 1 witch. So, anyways, I go to sleep now. Bye.